My job used to be boring in the most reassuring way. If you drove through southeastern Pennsylvania and didn't think twice about it, if you merged onto Interstate 95 and the traffic moved, if the overhead signs told you what you needed to know, if the shoulders stayed clear and the exits didn't back up for miles, then my team did our job right. People never notice the Highway Operations Center when it's working. They notice when it isn't. I worked out of the Regional Traffic Management Center outside Philadelphia, the kind of building most people mistake for a warehouse. Inside were video walls, rows of workstations, radios, phone lines, incident logs, computer maps, live feeds from cameras mounted on poles and gantries, and a constant low hum of air conditioning keeping equipment from overheating. We tracked crashes, disabled vehicles, debris in lanes, weather, construction, special events. We coordinated with state police, city emergency management, fire and rescue, tow operators, and the highway service patrol trucks that could get to a problem faster than anyone else during rush hour. My name is Aaron Keller. I was 36. I'd done 10 years in highway maintenance as a field supervisor before moving into traffic operations. I knew the roads like some people know their neighborhood streets. I knew which ramps flooded first, where the glare got bad at sunset, which bridges iced faster, which interchanges turned into traps when lanes closed. None of that felt dramatic until the week the highways stopped being routes and started being boundaries. It started as a medical call. At 7:18 a.m. on a Monday, a 911 dispatcher patched a call to our center because it involved a person walking on I-95 near a construction zone. That happens more often than you'd think. Someone's car breaks down, someone loses a tire, someone panics and does the worst possible thing and tries to cross lanes on foot. Our procedure was simple. Verify camera view, alert state police, update the incident log, activate a message on nearby overhead signs if necessary, and send a highway service patrol unit if it was safe. I pulled the camera feed. The picture was grainy in the morning glare, but I could see the person on the shoulder. They were moving awkwardly, like they were limping or stiff. The dispatch notes said, "Male, unknown age, bleeding, possibly confused." Bleeding wasn't unusual either. People cut themselves changing tires, they crash, they stumble. But something about the way he moved made my skin tighten. He wasn't waving. He wasn't trying to flag traffic. He was drifting toward the right lane like he couldn't judge distance. I keyed the radio for the closest patrol unit. Service Patrol 6, be advised, pedestrian on I-95 northbound near mile marker 22, right shoulder moving into lane. State police en route. Do you have eyes? A pause. Then the patrol driver, Rich Weller, came back. Copy. I'm about 5 minutes out. I'll stage on the shoulder behind him. Any details? Bleeding, possibly disoriented, I said. Keep it safe. Don't get in the lane. We watched on camera as traffic flowed past. Cars swerved slightly, then corrected. Someone honked. The pedestrian didn't react. Then he lunged. A white sedan in the right lane braked hard. The pedestrian grabbed at the passenger door as the car rolled, like he was trying to pull it open. The driver jerked the wheel, bounced onto the shoulder, and stopped at an angle with the passenger side nearly in the grass. The door opened and a woman stumbled out, hands up, backing away. The pedestrian followed her without hesitation. I didn't have sound. I didn't need it. The woman ran toward the camera's direction, slipping on gravel. The pedestrian moved faster than his stiff gait suggested he could. He caught her. They went down together in the narrow strip between shoulder and grass. That's when Rich's patrol truck entered the frame, arrow board flashing. Truck angled to shield the scene. Rich jumped out, too fast, too close. Running like instinct and training were both yelling at him to help. On the camera, he reached them. The pedestrian's head snapped up. Rich froze. I could almost feel his brain catching up to what his eyes were seeing. The woman shoved away and scrambled, trying to crawl. Rich grabbed her arm to pull her back. The pedestrian lunged at Rich. The camera shook slightly from wind on the mount, but I saw enough. I saw Rich stagger back, one hand up, the other grabbing for something on his belt. He didn't have a weapon. Patrol units carry cones, flares, a fire extinguisher, a basic medical kit, tools. They're not law enforcement. Rich swung the fire extinguisher like a club. The pedestrian didn't go down the way people go down when they're hit. He kept coming. The camera view was too far to see details clearly, but the motion was wrong. It was frantic and close and ugly. Rich backed toward his truck, stumbling. The woman got to her feet and ran toward the grass. I slammed my hand on the desk and called state police again, voice sharper than I wanted it to be. We have an active assault on I-95 northbound, near mile marker 22. Patrol unit involved. Expedite. The dispatcher's tone changed instantly. Copy. Units are moving. On screen, Rich finally got the extinguisher between them and fired. A white cloud blasted the pedestrian in the face and upper body. That did something. The pedestrian flinched, hands up, staggering a step. Rich didn't wait. He ran to his driver door, dove in, slammed it, and the truck lurched forward. His tires kicked gravel. He didn't even try to back up and check on the woman. He just got distance. The pedestrian stood alone on the shoulder, covered in extinguisher powder, head turning like he was tracking movement he could hear more than see. Then he stepped into the right lane. A pickup truck swerved to avoid him and clipped the patrol truck's rear corner as it accelerated. The pickup spun, hit the guardrail, bounced back into traffic. 2 more cars piled in. Someone hit the median. Suddenly, there was a multi-vehicle crash where there had been flowing traffic 30 seconds before. I started the chain we'd practiced for major incidents. Notify our supervisor. Notify emergency management. Update the live incident board. Activate warning messages upstream. The overhead signs went from travel times to blunt instructions. Major incident ahead. Use caution. It still wasn't the end of the world. Not yet. By 10:30 a.m., we had 4 more similar calls. Different locations, different people. Same basic pattern. Someone disoriented on or near a highway, then a sudden violent rush toward whoever got close. We got reports from the New Jersey side, too, across the river. Our radios filled with the confused voices from patrol units and state police dispatchers trying to make sense of what their eyes were telling them. I told myself it was drugs. Some new synthetic, some outbreak of bad product, or maybe a neurological illness. I'd seen videos of people in medical crisis acting unpredictably. There were explanations that fit if you force them hard enough. But by lunchtime, the explanations started breaking. Around 12:45 p.m., a tractor-trailer driver called in from the New Jersey Turnpike, voice shaking. He said there were people walking between stopped cars near an interchange, pulling at doors, climbing onto hoods. He said he was locked in his cab, and he could hear them hitting metal with their hands. He said some of them weren't wearing shoes. He said one of them had a hospital wristband. At 1:10 p.m., a state trooper reported that a man they'd tried to restrain after a roadside incident bit another trooper hard enough to draw blood. The radio went silent for a moment after he said it, like everyone listening had the same thought and didn't want to give it a name. At 2 p.m., the first big jam formed. People started leaving work early. Rumors moved faster than our incident logs. Social media posts talked about attacks on highways, about sick people on ramps. Parents picked up kids from schools, stores filled, gas stations had lines. The roads loaded like they do before a snowstorm, except it wasn't snow in the forecast. It was clear and cold and bright. By 2:30 p.m., I-95 northbound was slowing from normal congestion to near standstill around the big choke points. Bridge approaches, interchanges, construction merges. I watched it happen on the camera feeds and map sensors. Red lines spread like spilled paint. In traffic operations, a jam is usually just physics. Too many cars, not enough lanes, a disruption that triggers braking. You can predict it. You can manage it. This jam didn't behave like physics. It had pockets of complete stoppage that didn't match any crash report. It had sudden waves of vehicles reversing onto shoulders, people driving the wrong way on off-ramps. It had cars abandoned at odd angles, doors open, hazards flashing like someone had stepped out for a second and never came back. At 3:05 p.m., my supervisor, Dana Mukherjee, walked out of her office and stood behind my chair. Dana was usually calm in the way that made everyone else calm. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't panic. When she stood behind you, it meant she was checking the whole floor, reading the room. "Give me your worst," she said quietly. I pointed at the video wall where our main highway feeds cycled. We're seeing multiple incidents with disoriented pedestrians, assaults, secondary crashes, and the jams are getting weird. Dana watched a feed from I-76 near the Schuylkill River. Cars were stopped bumper to bumper. People were out of vehicles on the shoulder, waving, some running. A man stood in the middle lane, arms hanging, facing oncoming traffic that couldn't move anyway. "He's not asking for help," Dana said. "No," I said. "He's just there." Dana picked up the phone and called our liaison at the State Emergency Operations Center. I didn't hear the other end, but I heard Dana's voice go from measured to clipped. "We need direction. These are not normal incidents. We need law enforcement staging. We need emergency messaging. And if you're considering closures, do it now while we still have control." She hung up and looked at me. "What's your gut?" "My gut says the highways are turning into traps," I said. Dana nodded once, like she'd already reached the same conclusion. "Start thinking like it's a containment problem, not a traffic problem." Containment. That word didn't belong to my world. Not really. You contain a chemical spill. You contain a fire. You contain a hazardous material release. You don't contain people. But an hour later, that's what we were trying to do. By late afternoon, state police started closing ramps in certain areas. Not a full shutdown. Too big, too complicated, too dangerous to do all at once, but targeted closures around active incidents. Overhead signs flashed instructions. Exit now. Road closed ahead. Patrol units put cones across ramps. Troopers stood at gore points with cruisers angled like barriers. And people ignored them. Some drivers did because they were scared and desperate. Some did because they thought they knew better. Some did because they believed the only safety was distance, and the highways promised distance. Distance was exactly what the highways stopped offering. At 5:20 p.m., the first major pileup hit the news. A chain reaction crash near a merge point on I-95 southbound. Dozens of vehicles. The initial cause was unclear. Some reports said a pedestrian ran into lanes. Some said multiple pedestrians. Some said attackers were pulling people from cars. The footage on local television showed a wall of stopped vehicles and people running between them. The camera never lingered long enough to show anything that would violate broadcast rules, but you could see the panic. By 6 p.m., our center was no longer just coordinating traffic. We were coordinating evacuation routes, emergency closures, and information that felt like it belonged in disaster response more than transportation. Dana called a floor meeting. We stood between desks, under bright lights, surrounded by screens showing roads turning red. "Listen up," she said. "We are switching to emergency operations posture. We will support the State Emergency Operations Center, state police, and local emergency management. We will keep messages accurate. Do not spread rumors. Do not improvise official instructions. If you're not sure, ask." Someone raised a hand. "Are these infected people? Like a disease?" Donna's eyes flicked to the video wall and back. "There is a medical component. That's all I'm going to say. We're not the health department. Our job is to keep information moving." Another voice, low and angry. "My wife is trying to get home on the turnpike and it's stopped. They won't let people off." Dana's expression tightened. "If your family is on the highway, tell them to get off the highway if they can. Side roads, neighborhood streets, anywhere but a stopped interstate." It was the first time I heard someone in authority say the thing my gut had been screaming since noon. The highway itself was becoming the danger. At 7:30 p.m., the governor's office held a press conference. I didn't watch it live. We were too busy. But the summary hit our internal messaging. A public safety emergency. Violent incidents. Unknown illness. Stay home. Avoid highways unless necessary. Do not approach individuals acting erratically. Call 911. That last part became meaningless within hours, because the system was collapsing under the weight of too many calls. The first night was when the word dead zone started feeling literal. In traffic terms, a dead zone is a stretch of road with poor radio coverage or camera blind spots. We have those. Hills, curves, old infrastructure, places where you lose signal and then regain it. Now there were dead zones made of cars. Stopped lanes packed so tight no one could turn around. Shoulders blocked, ramps jammed. Median crossings clogged with people trying to escape. By midnight, the video wall looked like a series of frozen rivers, headlights and taillights locked in place, while small figures moved between vehicles like something you don't want to imagine too closely. Around 12:40 a.m., the lights flickered in our building. Not a full blackout, just a brief dip that made everyone look up. Dana immediately ordered us to save critical logs and print key maps. Our backup power systems kicked in without drama, but it was a reminder. If the grid started failing, our center would go dark too. The highways would still be there, but the coordination would not. At 1:15 a.m., Dana pulled me aside. "I need someone who understands the field," she said. "We're losing contact with multiple patrol units. State police are stretched. They're asking for help checking a maintenance yard where some of our people might have staged." "Where?" I asked. Dana named the yard, one I knew well. It sat near a cloverleaf interchange where I-95 met a major route. It had salt domes, plow trucks, sign shop materials, fuel tanks, and a small office. It also had fences and gates. It could be a shelter, or it could be a trap. Dana's eyes held mine. "I'm not ordering you," she said, "but if we don't find our people, we lose more than staff. We lose capability." I thought about Rich, the patrol driver from the morning. I hadn't heard his voice again after his near miss. I thought about the other patrol units, guys and women I knew by first name, people who fixed flat tires for strangers in heat waves and jumped at every incident because that was the job. "I'll go," I said. Dana exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath. "Take a radio. Take a hard copy map. Take someone you trust." I looked across the floor and saw Luis Ortega at his station. Luis had been a dispatcher before joining us. He knew how to talk on a radio under pressure. He also had a calmness that didn't feel fake. "You?" I called. "Grab your go bag." Luis blinked. "Where are we going?" "Field check," I said. "Maintenance yard." Luis stood without arguing. He just started pulling items from drawers. Flashlight, spare batteries, paper maps, his radio headset. He moved like someone who'd already accepted that this wasn't going to be normal again. At 1:45 a.m., we walked out of the traffic management center into cold air and a parking lot lit by orange lamps. The city glow was visible in the distance, but it felt quieter than it should. Fewer cars, less ambient noise. Like the usual constant movement had paused. My truck was a standard pickup, nothing special. I kept it maintained because I drove a lot for work. The bed held a toolbox, a few cones, a reflective vest. I grabbed an extra vest for Luis. We weren't going to look like law enforcement, and I didn't want anyone mistaking us for something else either. Dana had told us to avoid highways. That was easier said than done in this region. The interstates were the spine, but there were surface routes, state roads, industrial connectors, old streets that predated the freeway network. We drove on those. At 2:10 a.m., we passed a gas station with its lights on, but no cars. The convenience store doors were locked. Someone had hung a handwritten sign in the window. Closed. No power. But the lights were on. "Generators," Luis said quietly. I nodded. Gas stations sometimes have backup power, especially if they serve as emergency fueling sites. But the fact they were closed told me either the staff had fled or they didn't think they could keep people out. We kept going. The closer we got to the interchange, the more abandoned vehicles we saw on side roads. Not crashed, just left. Doors open, trunks up. A stroller tipped over in a ditch. A suitcase on a sidewalk. The kind of details that told you people had been moving fast and dropping anything that slowed them. At 2:28 a.m., we approached the maintenance yard access road. From a distance, I could see the chain-link fence and the gate, and beyond it, the dark shapes of plow trucks and equipment. The gate was open. Luis and I exchanged a look. Gates are not left open by accident. Not at night. Not in a maintenance yard full of fuel and equipment. I slowed, headlights sweeping the entrance. A patrol truck sat just inside the gate, angled weird, like someone had pulled in fast and stopped without straightening. Its aero board was off. The cab door was open. "Rich?" I said without thinking. Luis put a hand on the dash like he could steady the truck by touching it. "We should not walk into that blind," he said. He was right. We had radios, flashlights, and reflective vests. We did not have a team. We did not have protective gear. We did not have any guarantee that the people inside the yard were still themselves. I pulled onto the shoulder of the access road, shut off the truck lights, and let the engine idle. Darkness closed in, broken only by distant streetlights and the faint glow of the city. I keyed the radio on the channel we used for patrol units. "Service Patrol 6, this is Aaron Keller. If you can hear me, respond." Static. I tried again. "Any service patrol in Yard 12, respond." More static. Then a faint burst of sound that could have been a voice or could have been interference. Luis leaned in. "Try the maintenance channel," he said. I switched frequencies. "Yard 12, this is Aaron Keller with traffic ops. Any maintenance crew on site, respond." This time I got something clear. A woman's voice, tight with exhaustion. "Aaron?" My throat tightened. "Who is this?" "Kim," she said. "Kim Rausch, sign shop." Kim. I knew her. She built and repaired the big green highway signs that hung over lanes. Tough, practical, not easily rattled. "Kim," I said, "where are you?" "In the office," she said quickly. "Gates open because we had to pull people in fast." "Aaron, listen. Don't come in unless you're ready to close it behind you." Luis mouthed. "People." "How many?" I asked. "8 of us," Kim said. "And 3 civilians, maybe more outside. We can't tell, we've got the lights off." "Are you safe?" I asked. A pause. "We're contained," Kim said. "Safe is a strong word." That was the most honest answer I'd heard all day. I looked at Luis. "We're going in," I said. Luis swallowed. "We're going in," he repeated, like he needed to hear it out loud to make it real. I turned the truck lights back on, rolled forward slowly, and entered the yard. The open gate loomed. I drove through and stopped just inside, then jumped out, heart hammering, and pulled the gate closed. Chain link rattled. I wrapped the chain and snapped the padlock shut with hands that felt clumsy. Luis did the same on the other side, checking the latch. We weren't sealing ourselves in forever, but we were drawing a line. Then we moved fast to the small office building near the center of the yard, staying close to vehicles and stacks of materials for cover, listening for any sound that didn't belong. The yard was quiet, but not empty. Somewhere beyond the fence, on the access road leading to the interchange, there was a faint tapping sound, like fingers on metal. Slow, repetitive, a sound that made my skin crawl because it wasn't a normal human sound of impatience or anger. It was a sound of impulse with no higher thought behind it. Kim opened the office door just enough to pull us in. The inside smelled like old coffee, paper, and diesel from work boots. The lights were off except for a small battery lantern on a desk. Kim stood in the lantern glow. Her hair was pulled back, face smeared with dirt, eyes sharp. She looked at me like she was checking if I was really me. "You're late," she said, and the attempt at humor cracked around the edges. "We came as soon as Dana asked," I said. Kim nodded toward the back. "We've got people," she said. "Maintenance crew, 2 patrol drivers, and 3 civilians who ran in here from the road. One of the patrol drivers is hurt." My stomach dropped. "Rich?" Kim's face tightened. "Yeah," she said. "He got grabbed this morning. Not bad, but enough. We cleaned it and wrapped it. He says he feels fine." Louise and I both knew what the question was, but neither of us asked it out loud. Kim kept talking, like if she stopped, the fear would catch her. "We've got the generator ready if the power goes out. We've got fuel in the yard tanks. We've got a water cooler and some bottled water. We raided the vending machines. It's not much." "Tell me what happened," I said. Kim leaned against a filing cabinet, and in the dim light her shoulders looked heavier. "The highway's locked up," she said. "People got stuck. We started getting calls from patrol units about folks on foot. Then state police asked us to close ramps. We sent trucks. We tried to set cones. It didn't matter. People drove through them. Then the sick ones started showing up. They weren't just confused. They were aggressive. They didn't respond to shouting. They didn't respond to pain like normal." She paused, swallowing hard. Rich showed up with a bite on his forearm and said he didn't want to go home because he didn't want to risk his kids. He asked to stay here. Then 2 civilians ran in screaming, and behind them— She didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need her to. The office door had a small window. I stepped toward it and carefully pulled the curtain aside a fraction. Outside the fence, near the gate, shapes moved in the dark. Not many, maybe 6 or 7. They wandered in slow arcs, occasionally bumping the fence. One of them leaned into the chain link and pressed their face against it like they were trying to push through. Another walked away, then came back. Like the gate itself was a magnet they couldn't ignore. The tapping sound continued, fingers on metal. Luis whispered, "They're drawn to the structure." "Or the noise," I said. Kim said, "They came in waves, and every time there was an accident on the interchange, more showed up. People abandon cars and run. The sick follow." I looked back at the group inside the office. People sat on the floor with backs against walls, heads down, conserving energy. A man in a patrol uniform held his arm like it hurt. Another patrol driver stared at nothing. One of the civilians, a woman with a toddler asleep against her chest, watched us with eyes that had gone past fear into something empty. This wasn't a maintenance yard anymore. It was a lifeboat. Dana's words came back, containment. The highways were no longer roads. They were channels funneling people into choke points, and every choke point became a feeding ground for whatever was happening to the sick. In the early hours before dawn, the world outside got louder, not quieter. Sirens came and went. Somewhere in the distance, a loud crash echoed like metal folding. Then another, then a roar that might have been engines or might have been fire. At 4 a.m., our building power flickered again, then stabilized. Kim started the office generator anyway. Not to power lights, but to charge radios and keep a small heater running. The noise risked attracting the infected, but the office walls muffled it, and the cold was biting. At 5:15 a.m., state police radio traffic became chaotic. Units reported running low on personnel, low on fuel, low on options. Some troopers were staging at stations and not responding to calls because they'd been instructed to protect certain facilities. Some were trying to get home. Some went silent. When the sun finally came up, the highways revealed what the dark had hidden. From the office roof, you could see the interchange. I climbed up with Luis and Kim, careful on the ladder, and crouched behind a low parapet. The scene below looked like a frozen disaster. Multiple lanes on I-95 in both directions were jammed. The cloverleaf ramps were clogged. The shoulder was full of abandoned vehicles, sedans, SUVs, vans, a few tractor-trailers, angled like they'd tried to push through and failed. Some cars were still running, exhaust visible in the cold. Others had doors hanging open. Some had their hazard lights flashing, blinking like a field of warning beacons that no one could respond to. And in the gaps between cars, people moved. Some moved like survivors, fast, purposeful, hugging barriers, trying to reach the edges. You could tell by the way they looked over their shoulders and the way they kept distance from clusters of bodies. Others moved like the infected, unsteady, drawn toward motion and sound, gathering where a car horn blared continuously because someone had hit it and never released. I could see a cluster of infected around a minivan near a ramp merge. They weren't using tools. They weren't thinking. They were just pressing in, hands on glass, heads tilted, responding to whatever they could sense. A semi-horn blasted from somewhere in the jam, a long, angry sound that made birds lift from a nearby tree line. More infected turned toward it. Kim whispered, "This is why highways are dead zones now." Luis asked, "How far does it go?" I scanned the road. The jam stretched beyond what we could see from the roof. It was like the highway had stopped being a line and became a parking lot. "It goes until it can't," I said, "until there's nowhere else to stop." And that was the trap. People thought the highway meant escape, but a highway only works when movement is continuous. Once it stops, it becomes the worst place to be. Exposed, limited options, no cover, no supplies, no control. Down on the access road outside our fence, more infected had gathered overnight. The group had grown from 7 to maybe 25. They moved in loose clusters, bumping into each other, drifting toward the gate again and again. They weren't sprinting, they weren't climbing, they weren't coordinated, but they didn't leave. They lingered like they were waiting. Kim looked at me. "We can't stay here forever," she said. I nodded. "No," I agreed. "We need a plan." A maintenance yard had advantages: fences, equipment, fuel, but it was close to the interchange, which meant it was close to the dead zone. As long as people were stuck out there, the infected would keep coming, drawn by the noise and movement. And if the fence ever failed or a gate was forced, we'd be dealing with them at point-blank range with nothing but tools and whatever law enforcement had. We needed to move away from the highway. That was the hard part. To move away from the thing that used to be the safest route. Inside the office, we held a meeting around a desk with paper maps spread out. The map showed interstates and state routes, county roads, rivers, industrial parks. I traced with my finger. "We can't use I-95, I said. "We can't use the turnpike. Anything that's a major artery is going to be jammed or worse. We need back roads, industrial connectors, places people don't think of." One of the maintenance guys, Jerome, shook his head. "Back roads go through towns," he said. "Towns will be chaos." "Some will," I said, "but highways are guaranteed chaos. Towns at least have places to hide and supplies." Luis pointed at the map. "There's a smaller maintenance facility out near the county line," he said. "Not near an interstate. It's mostly for rural state routes." Kim nodded slowly. "Yard 27, she said. "I've been there. Smaller, but fenced." "How far?" Jerome asked. "About 25 miles, I said. "On normal roads." Jerome laughed without humor. "Nothing's normal." He was right, but distance was still distance. 25 miles was doable if we could move without getting trapped. The question was how. We had trucks in the yard, plow trucks, dump trucks, service pickups, patrol units, big vehicles with good visibility and the ability to push through obstacles if needed. We also had fuel, We had radios. We had reflective gear. We had tools. What we didn't have was certainty. And we had Rich. Rich sat on a chair in the corner, forearm wrapped in gauze. He looked tired but alert. When I approached him, he gave me a strained smile. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have stayed back." "You did what anyone would do," I said. He looked past me at the window. "I keep thinking about that guy," he said. "The one on the shoulder. His eyes, they weren't, I don't know, they weren't there." I wanted to tell him he'd be okay. I wanted to tell him that a bite was just a bite. But we'd already heard radio chatter. We'd already seen enough. Instead, I said, "How do you feel?" He flexed his fingers. "Fine," he said. "A little warm, probably from stress." Kim's gaze met mine over Rich's head. She didn't say anything, but her eyes asked the question we were avoiding. If Rich turned, he'd turn inside our fence. I made a decision that felt like swallowing a stone. "We're moving," I said to the room. "Today, we take the trucks, we take fuel, we take supplies, we move to Yard 27. We do it before midday, before everyone else tries to move again." The civilian woman with the toddler spoke up, voice thin. "What about us?" "You come," Kim said intermediately. "You stay with us. We don't leave people behind." Jerome muttered. "That's how you get killed." Dana's words echoed. "Do not improvise official instructions." But this wasn't official anymore. This was survival and logistics. I kept my voice steady. "We move as a convoy," I said. "We keep distance between vehicles so we can maneuver. We do not stop on major roads. If a route is blocked, we turn around before we get trapped." Luis added, "No horns, no unnecessary noise. Keep engines as quiet as possible." Kim glanced at Rich, then back at me. "And what about him?" she asked softly. Rich heard. His posture stiffened. "I'm coming," he said. "I'm not staying behind." I looked him in the eyes. "Rich," I said quietly, "if you feel sick, you tell us immediately." He nodded too fast. "I will," he said. I didn't believe him. Not because he was lying, but because denial is powerful. Because the human brain will fight reality until reality wins. We prepared like it was a severe weather deployment, except the threat wasn't snow or ice. It was people. We loaded bottled water, snacks, medical supplies, blankets. We grabbed flashlights, spare batteries, radios, a few traffic control signs that could help us warn or divert if needed. Jerome siphoned fuel into portable cans. Kim grabbed a toolbox and a bolt cutter. Luis printed route maps and marked our path with a highlighter. We chose vehicles based on function. Lead vehicle. A patrol truck with an aero board, not because we wanted to use it, but because it was maneuverable and had good radio setup. Second, a heavy dump truck. If we needed to push aside debris or a light vehicle blocking a narrow road, the dump truck could do it without stopping. Third, my pickup, carrying people and supplies. Fourth, another maintenance pickup with more supplies. Last, a plow truck. Heavy, capable, and intimidating, in a way that might discourage desperate survivors from trying to take it. We staged at the gate at 9:30 a.m. The infected outside the fence drifted closer as engines started, like sound was a magnet. Hands touched chain link. Faces pressed in. Kim gripped the gate chain. "When it opens, go," she said. Luis sat in the passenger seat of the lead patrol truck, headset on, eyes scanning. I started my truck, hands tight on the wheel. The civilian woman sat in the back seat with her toddler strapped in. She clutched a diaper bag like it was her last link to normal life. Rich sat in the passenger seat next to me, forearm wrapped, breathing shallow. "You ready?" I asked him. He nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Let's get out of here." Kim unlocked the gate and swung it open. The chain link scraped on gravel. The infected surged toward the opening immediately, not sprinting, but with enough urgency that the difference didn't matter. Their arms reached through the air like they were grabbing at the idea of us. The lead patrol truck rolled out first, careful not to jerk forward and draw them under wheels. The dump truck followed, engine loud despite our desire for quiet. The infected turned their heads toward it, drawn to the vibration. I pulled out third, keeping a steady speed. One infected stumbled toward my driver door. Their face was pale, mouth slack, eyes unfocused. They slapped the side of my truck with a flat palm. Not a punch. Not anger. Just contact. The sound made the toddler in the back seat whimper. Rich flinched and reached toward the glove box without thinking. He didn't find anything helpful. I hadn't kept anything in there beyond paperwork and a flashlight. We cleared the gate. Kim swung it shut behind the last vehicle and locked it as best she could. Then she climbed into her pickup and hit the gas, catching up to the convoy. We drove down the access road away from the interchange, taking the first available side route that led toward industrial streets. Behind us, the infected pressed against the closed gate again, trapped outside our fence but not gone. They were someone else's problem now, and that thought tasted bitter. The first mile was tense but manageable. We passed a line of abandoned cars on the shoulder of a surface road, drivers long gone. We saw a few survivors walking with backpacks, heads down, moving like they didn't want to be seen. We didn't stop. We couldn't. At a four-way intersection near a small strip mall, we hit our first real obstacle. A cluster of vehicles blocked the road. 3 cars and a delivery van tangled in a mess that looked like it had happened fast. One car was half on the sidewalk, front end crushed into a light pole. Another sat sideways, blocking both lanes. The van's rear doors were open, boxes spilled out. And near the van, 6 infected wandered, drawn to the scattered goods and the scent of people that had been there. Luis's voice came over the radio. "Obstacle ahead," he said calmly. "We're turning right." The lead patrol truck turned right onto a narrower street. The dump truck followed, making the turn slowly with a wide arc. My pickup went next. As I turned, one infected looked up and noticed us. Their head snapped toward the convoy like a dog hearing a whistle. They started moving toward the intersection. "Don't stop," Luis repeated over the radio. "Do not stop." We didn't. The narrower street led through a residential area. Houses sat quiet, some with doors open. A dog barked from a backyard, frantic. A man stood on a porch holding something long and dark, maybe a baseball bat, maybe a tool. He watched us pass and didn't wave. We kept moving. At 10:22 a.m., we crossed under a railroad overpass where the road dipped. The underpass was shadowed and smelled like damp concrete. A row of cars sat abandoned under it, doors open like people had fled into the neighborhood. The dump truck slowed, preparing to weave through. Then a figure stepped out from behind a car. Not infected, alive. A young woman in a hoodie, hair tangled, waving both arms. She ran toward the lead patrol truck, mouth open, shouting something we couldn't hear over engines. The convoy slowed reflexively. Luisa's voice came sharp over the radio. "Keep moving, keep moving." The woman sprinted alongside the patrol truck, banging on the passenger door. Luis looked at her through the window, face tight. The patrol driver stared straight ahead. The woman ran to the next vehicle, the dump truck, and tried to grab the side mirror, nearly tripping under the huge wheel. She stumbled back, eyes wild. Then she pointed behind us. I glanced in my mirror and felt my stomach drop. A cluster of infected was entering the underpass from the far side, drawn by the noise and movement. They weren't far, maybe 50 yards, but they were coming. The woman saw them too. She froze, then turned back toward the convoy, pleading. Rich shouted, "We can't leave her." I didn't answer. I couldn't, because there was no clean answer. If we stopped, we risked being swarmed in a narrow underpass with limited maneuver room. If we didn't stop, we left a living person to face a group of infected. Kim's voice came over the radio, hard. "We're not stopping," she said. "We can't. Not here." The woman ran toward my pickup, slapping my passenger window. I saw tears on her face, saw the moment she realized we weren't going to save her. I did something that I'll never know if it was bravery or stupidity. I slowed just enough and yanked my rear door open with my left hand while steering with my right. The civilian woman in the back seat gasped and pulled the toddler closer. "Get in!" I shouted through the cracked window. The young woman didn't hesitate. She grabbed the doorframe and half dove into the back seat, legs still out as I accelerated again. She slammed the door herself, panting, eyes wide. The infected were closer now, entering the underpass, drawn by the sudden burst of speed. We cleared the underpass and didn't look back. When the road widened again, I spoke into the radio. "I picked up a survivor," I said. "One extra in my truck?" There was a pause. Then Luis said, "Copy. Keep moving." Rich turned in his seat to look at the young woman. "What's your name?" he asked. She swallowed hard. "Nina," she said. "Nina Park." Nina's hands shook as she held onto the seat. She looked at the toddler, then at the woman holding him, then back at us. "Thank you," Nina whispered. The mother didn't speak. She just stared forward with the exhausted blankness of someone whose brain had shut down to survive. We kept moving. For the next hour, we threaded through streets and county roads, avoiding anything that looked like it might feed back into a major route. We passed a grocery store with smashed windows and carts scattered in the lot. We passed a line of cars at a closed gas station, drivers pounding on locked doors. We passed an ambulance parked at an angle, doors open, no one inside. The farther we got from the interchange, the fewer infected we saw. Not zero. Never zero. But fewer. And then, at 11:40 a.m., we hit the second obstacle. A bridge. A small bridge over a creek. 2 lanes, no shoulder, guardrails tight. And on the far side, a school bus sat sideways across the road, blocking it completely. The bus door was open. No kids. Just the bus, abandoned like a wall. The lead patrol truck stopped short. The dump truck braked behind it. The convoy compressed, exactly what we had tried to avoid. Luis's voice came over the radio, tense. "Bridge blocked. No room to pass." Kim's voice. "Can the dump truck push it?" The patrol driver answered before Luis could. "If we push, we might damage the bridge rail, and if the bus shifts wrong, we're stuck." I stared at the bus. It looked like it had been deliberately placed, not crashed, like someone had turned it into a barricade, which meant someone might still be nearby. Nina whispered from the back seat. "People are blocking roads," she said. "They were doing it where I was. They were trying to stop anyone from leaving so they could take their cars." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. That was another layer I hadn't wanted to think about. Survivors turning on survivors. Not infected, not sick, just desperate. Making choices that hurt other people because they thought it was the only way to live. Luis spoke again. "We're reversing," he said. "Back up slowly. Do not hit each other." Backing a convoy on a narrow road is a nightmare on a good day. On a day when the world is falling apart, it's a gamble. The lead patrol truck reversed first, carefully. The dump truck backed, mirrors wide, engine rumbling. I backed my pickup, watching for the vehicle behind me. The road shoulder was soft, and one wrong wheel could slide into a ditch. As we backed, I saw movement in the tree line near the bridge. 3 men stepped out, wearing hoodies and work gloves. One held a bat. Another held something that looked like a tire iron. The third carried a long tool that might have been a crowbar. They didn't look infected. They looked alert. They approached the convoy, walking fast. Luis's voice came sharp. "Do not engage. Keep backing." The men shouted. I couldn't hear words clearly, but the tone was aggressive, demanding. One of them pointed at the lead patrol truck, gesturing for it to stop. The patrol driver didn't. He kept backing. The man with the crowbar jogged forward, raising it like he meant to smash a windshield. The dump truck's horn blasted once, loud and low. The sound echoed through the trees like a warning. The men froze. Not because they were scared of the truck, because the horn carried. And horns travel. I saw it immediately. Heads turning in the distance, on the bridge approach, in the woods. Movement that hadn't been there a second ago. The men saw it too. Their faces shifted from anger to calculation. They backed away from the road, suddenly wanting to be invisible. "Keep moving," Luis said. "Do not stop." We backed until we reached a wider spot where a side road branched off. Luis turned the convoy onto it without pausing. The side road was gravel and rutted, but it led away from the bridge and away from whoever had tried to trap us. And away from the infected that would inevitably follow any loud sound. We drove for another 40 minutes through rural roads, past fields and small clusters of houses. The landscape looked normal in a way that felt wrong. The sky was blue. The winter trees were bare. Smoke rose from a chimney somewhere. Then we saw it. Yard 27. A smaller maintenance facility tucked near a state route. Chain-link fence, locked gate, a few buildings, equipment lined up like it was waiting for a normal morning that would never come. The gate was closed. Thank God. We pulled up and stopped, engines idling. Luis got out of the lead patrol truck, walked to the gate, and used a key from a maintenance set Kim had brought. The padlock clicked open. We drove in and closed it behind us. Inside the yard, the silence felt like a gift. People got out slowly, stretching stiff legs, looking around like they expected something to jump from behind the salt dome. Kim walked the perimeter fence, checking for weak points. Jerome checked the fuel tanks. Luis set up radios and tried to establish contact with Dana and the traffic center. I walked Nina and the mother with the toddler into the small office building. The office was sparse. Desks, chairs, bulletin boards with safety posters, an old coffee maker, but it had walls, doors, and a sense of separation from the dead zones we'd just escaped. Nina sat on the floor, back against a wall, eyes closed, breathing hard. The mother finally spoke, voice barely audible. "My name is Tessa," she said. "This is Eli." I nodded. "Aaron," I said. "We'll keep you safe here." I didn't know if that was true, but people needed something to hold on to. Outside, Rich sat on the steps, forearm on his knee, staring at the yard like he was listening for something only he could hear. I walked over and crouched near him. "You doing okay?" I asked. He smiled weakly. "Yeah," he said. "Better now that we're away from the highway." His skin looked pale. His eyes looked slightly unfocused. My throat tightened. "Rich," I said quietly, "be honest with me. How do you feel?" He swallowed. "Warm," he admitted. "Headache, but it's probably nothing." It wasn't nothing. I stood and motioned to Kim. When she came over, I kept my voice low. "We need to isolate Rich," I said. Kim's jaw tightened. "He'll fight it," she said. "I know," I said, "but if he turns here, inside the fence, we lose everything." Kim looked at Rich, then at the buildings. "There's a storage room in the back," she said. "Solid door, small window." Luis joined us, face grim. "I can't reach Dana," he said. "The radio channels are mostly dead. Cell service is spotty." Kim nodded once, decision made. "We do what we can," she said. "We hold here." We approached Rich together. Kim spoke first. "Rich," she said, voice steady, "we need you in the back room for a while." Rich's eyes narrowed. "What?" he said. "No, I'm fine." "You're not," I said gently. "And you know it." Rich's breath hitched. "Don't," he said, and there was fear in his voice now. "Please don't do this." Kim put a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing coming here," she said. "You protected your family. Now protect us too." Rich's eyes filled, but he nodded slowly, like the reality finally reached him. We walked him inside. He didn't resist. Not yet. We put him in the storage room with water, blankets, and a radio. We closed the door and locked it. The click of the lock sounded louder than it should have. Then we sat in the office, listening, waiting. By late afternoon, distant smoke rose from the direction of the city. The sky took on a gray haze. The radio remained mostly silent except for occasional bursts of static and fragmented voices. The world was shrinking into pockets, fences, rooms, small groups of people trying to stay alive. And the highways, the great connectors of the modern world, were turning into lines you didn't cross unless you had no other choice. At 6:30 p.m., Rich's voice crackled through the radio from inside the storage room. "Aaron," he said, sounding small. I grabbed the handheld. "I'm here," I said. "I'm sorry," Rich said. "I didn't want to believe it." My throat tightened. "I know," I said. "Just stay calm." There was a pause. Then Rich said, "I can hear them." "Who?" I asked, heart hammering. "The ones outside," he whispered. "Not here. Not at the fence. Farther. Like they're out by the road. And they're making that sound. That tapping. Like before." I stared at Kim and Luis. Kim's face went pale. Luis whispered, "They followed us." And that's when I understood the next truth. It wasn't enough to leave the highway. The dead zones were spreading outward from the highways like cracks in ice. Every jam, every stranded line of cars, every abandoned interchange was a source point. Noise and movement drew the infected, and the infected drew fear, and fear drew more movement. Highways had become dead zones, and dead zones were becoming the new map. I stepped outside into the cold evening air and listened. At first I heard nothing but wind. Then, faintly, from the direction of the state route beyond our fence, I heard it. A tapping sound. Slow, repetitive, like fingers on metal. And I knew that tomorrow we'd be forced to make another choice. Stay behind a fence and hope it held. Or move again into a world where every road might lead back to the dead zones.